I was halfway through scrubbing oil off my driveway when I heard the sharp clack of heels echoing across the cul-de-sac. Only one person in the entire neighborhood walked like that Gloria Summers, the HOA Vice President and self-appointed Queen of Maple Ridge, Victor Harland. She barked, storming up my driveway holding a stack of envelopes like they were damning evidence in a federal case. "You've crossed a line this time." I stood up, wiping my hands on a rag. "Morning to you too, Gloria. What's the tantrum today?" She held out a single envelope dramatically. "This is federal mail theft. I saw you take this from my box." I blinked. "That's my name on it." I pointed at the envelope. "Victor Harland, see, same as the name on my mailbox. That's my mail." Gloria shoved her sunglasses up her forehead and squinted. "No, this was in my mailbox." "I saw it." "Then take it up with the post office," I said, turning back to my driveway. "Because I didn't put it there." She didn't like that response. You could practically hear her ego deflating. But instead of backing off, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911. "No joke, officer," she said when they picked up. "A resident stole my mail. I want him arrested now." I crossed my arms and waited. I'd had run-ins with her before stupid HOA fines over flag placement, trash can lid being ajar, alleged unauthorized grass length. But this was a new level of crazy. 12 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. Officer Reynolds stepped out. I recognized him. He lived 2 streets over and had probably dealt with Gloria's nonsense more than once. "All right," he said with a tired sigh. "What's this about stolen mail?" Gloria practically shoved the envelope into his chest. "This man stole it from my mailbox." Reynolds looked at the envelope, then at me. "Victor Harland, that's me," I said. He tilted the envelope. "This is addressed to him." Gloria's jaw twisted. But it was in my box." Reynolds raised an eyebrow. "Well, then it sounds like the mail carrier made a mistake. That's not a crime, and it's definitely not mail theft unless he deliberately opened something addressed to you." "He still took it out," she snapped. "That's suspicious." Reynolds looked at me. "Did you open the mailbox?" I pointed to my Ring cam right above the garage. "Footage is all there. Never touched her mailbox. The mailman probably dropped it in hers by mistake and she brought it over thinking it was hers." Reynolds glanced at Gloria. "Is that what happened?" She went quiet. "Ma'am," he said, "filing a false police report is a misdemeanor. Are you sure you want to keep pressing this?" Gloria's face went red. She didn't answer. She just turned around and stomped off like a toddler who didn't get the last cookie. Reynolds shook his head. "You'd think being on the HOA board would make someone more careful," I chuckled. "You'd think." But I wasn't laughing later that night when I checked my mailbox again and found it, wide open, empty. And the next morning, I got a fine from the HOA. Violation 1123, tampering with community mailboxes. Yeah, Gloria wasn't done yet. HOA story HO a stories homeowners association stories. I didn't sleep much that night. Between the fine and the mailbox being left open, something didn't sit right. I didn't just feel frustrated, I felt like I was being set up. And when you've worked in hospital security for over 2 decades, you learn to trust your gut when something feels off. The next morning, I left for work early. Before I got in the truck, I checked the Ring footage again. At exactly 2:17 a.m., a figure in a bathrobe and slippers hovered around my mailbox. She didn't touch it at first, just stood there for a while, looking over her shoulder. Then, using what looked like a penlight, she aimed it at the lock and gently pulled the mailbox open. She never took anything, just left it wide open and walked away. I paused the video and zoomed in. Even in grainy night vision, the shape of her hair, the oversized sunglasses perched on her head, and the leopard-printed robe were all unmistakable. Gloria Summers. I saved the footage and emailed it to myself. Then I drove straight to City Hall on my way to the hospital. A friend of mine, Lenny, worked in the code enforcement office. I caught him just as he was unlocking his door. "I thought you retired," he said, grinning, tossing his breakfast sandwich onto the desk. "I did. From security," I said. "Now I'm being harassed by a lady with too much time and a clipboard." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Tell me everything." I laid out the incident with the mail, the false 911 call, the bogus fine, and the footage I'd captured overnight. Lenny's mood shifted as I talked. His easy morning grin slowly faded into something more serious. "You have the footage on you?" he asked. I pulled up the video on my phone. He watched it twice, not saying a word. When it ended, he tapped his keyboard and pulled up a database. "Here's the thing," he said. "HOAs can issue fines, but they have to follow procedure, and tampering with a mailbox, that's a federal issue. If she opened yours even without taking anything, that's still a violation of Title 18, Section 1705. "Which is," I asked, "federal offense." "Tampering with mailboxes is taken seriously, especially if it was done to fabricate violations." He leaned back, cracking his knuckles. "You want to escalate this?" I didn't hesitate. "Absolutely," he nodded. "Then you're going to want to talk to Postal Inspector Services. That's their jurisdiction. And I'll flag that fine for review. If it violates city code, the HOA could be in trouble for issuing it." By noon, I was on a call with a federal postal investigator named Agent Monica Reyes. She was brisk, asked precise questions, and told me to forward the footage and a summary of the incident. Less than an hour after I sent it, she called back. "We've had complaints about that HOA before," she said, "but nothing solid, until now." She asked if I'd be willing to provide a written statement and possibly testify if it came to that. I agreed. She said they'd begin a formal inquiry and that I should keep my footage backed up and secure. I uploaded it to 3 separate cloud accounts and kept a copy on a flash drive in my glove box. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. I noticed Gloria didn't walk past my house anymore. Her usual mid-morning strut was absent. But I did spot someone different, a man in a navy windbreaker with an ID badge clipped to his collar, taking photos of mailboxes up and down the street. I didn't approach him, but I had a good guess who sent him. Then on Saturday morning I got a visit from someone unexpected. A woman named Dana, who lived on the opposite end of the block, knocked on my door. She was holding a manila folder and looked uneasy. "I heard what happened," she said. "Gloria's been spinning a different version of events." "Let me guess," I said. "She's the victim," Dana nodded. "She told the board you threatened her, that you've been intimidating her since she joined." I laughed, but Dana didn't. "She's planning to call an emergency meeting, said it's about your behavior. She wants to push for a vote to suspend your community privileges." I raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Pool access, clubhouse use, and if she gets enough votes, voting rights for board elections. She claims it's for safety." I stared at her. "She's trying to silence me." Dana opened the folder. "Which is why I wanted to show you this." Inside were copies of several violation notices issued over the last 6 months, identical fonts, same formatting, all signed by Gloria. But each had different violation codes than what the HOA bylaws listed. "She's been using fake codes," Dana said. I compared them line by line with the official documentation. "These don't match anything." "How many people got these?" I asked. "Dozens, but most just paid them. It's easier than contesting." "Not anymore. I didn't have legal training, but I knew enough to recognize patterns, and this was fraud." Gloria had been inventing penalties and collecting money for them. I had proof of forgery, false claims to law enforcement, and now federal mailbox tampering. I thanked Dana and promised to protect her identity. Then I made 3 more copies of her documents. That night, I called Agent Reyes and updated her. When I mentioned the fake fines and potential financial misconduct, she said she'd bring in someone from the Financial Crimes Division. Sunday afternoon, just before dinner, 2 black sedans rolled into the neighborhood. They didn't knock on my door, but I watched from my living room as they stopped in front of Gloria's house. She opened her door, wearing a wide-brimmed hat and a silk robe, and tried to wave them off like they were selling magazines. They didn't leave. They showed her a badge, then stepped inside. By Monday morning, the neighborhood chat was on fire. Gloria hadn't been seen since the agents left. The HOA hotline rang straight to voicemail. And by noon, a notice was posted at the community center. Emergency board meeting suspended until further notice. I didn't celebrate yet. I'd seen enough to know these things took time, but I did install a second security camera angled at the street, just in case someone else got any ideas. That evening, as I reviewed my footage again, I noticed something odd. 2 nights before the agents showed up, a white sedan had driven by my house at 3:42 a.m. It didn't stop, but it slowed down in front of my mailbox. The plate was visible for a second. I wrote it down. The next day, I handed that plate over to Agent Reyes too. Because if Gloria wasn't working alone, I wanted the whole nest of snakes cleared out. By Tuesday morning, the neighborhood was no longer whispering. It was roaring. Gloria's sudden disappearance from her usual morning routine had everyone speculating, but no one had anything concrete. Even the usual board sycophants were unusually quiet. I wasn't surprised. When the queen bee goes missing, the hive panics. I spent the morning reviewing more of the HOA's violation notices that Dana had scanned for me. One thing stood out, a pattern in the monetary penalties. They were always just below the threshold that would trigger mandatory financial review from the city, strategically low, but high enough to discourage residents from contesting. It was smart in a criminal way. By noon, Agent Reyes called again. Her tone was sharper than before. "Victor, we verified the source of the white sedan. It belongs to a subcontractor the HOA's been using for security patrols. But here's the kicker, they're not licensed. Not in the state, not in any state. It's a shell company." "Let me guess," I said. "Connected to Gloria." Her nephew is listed as the founder. Same last name, different address, but we traced the business registration. It was filed from her property 2 years ago. That explained why the car had been circling the block. They weren't watching the neighborhood. "They were watching me," Reyes continued. "We're expanding the investigation. There's now a wire fraud component. We've also looped in the county prosecutor's office." I leaned back in my chair. "You think she's been embezzling?" "There's a good chance." HOA dues were being funneled into this security company's account. We're talking well into 6 figures. You need anything else from me? Just keep your cameras running. This case is about to go loud. And it did. That evening, a convoy of unmarked vehicles rolled into Maple Ridge just after sunset. They didn't use sirens. They didn't need to. The sight of 5 agents, 2 uniformed officers, and a state auditor walking up Gloria's front steps was louder than any siren. Her door was opened by a man I hadn't seen before, late 40s, wore loafers with no socks, and looked like he'd never missed a tanning appointment. He tried to block them from entering. That didn't last long. They were inside for over an hour. Meanwhile, neighbors gathered in driveways and on porches. Nobody dared approach, but everyone watched. Phones were out, cameras rolling quietly. The HOA's iron curtain had just torn down the middle. At exactly 8:46 p.m., Gloria was escorted out in handcuffs, not roughly but firmly. Her face was set in stone. No screaming, no protesting. Just cold silence. The man with the tan tried to argue, but a second pair of cuffs shut him up quickly. The agents loaded them into separate cars and drove off without a word. The next morning, a notice was taped to every mailbox in the neighborhood by a city clerk. It was stamped with the seal of the county district attorney's office. The HOA board was being dissolved pending a full investigation. All financial activity was frozen. All fines issued in the last 2 years would be suspended until verified. That afternoon, I got another visit, this time from a man in a gray suit with a briefcase, and the kind of expression that told you he was only here because he had to be. "Mr. Harland," he said, extending a card. "I'm with the county legal counsel. We're conducting interviews with residents who may have been targeted." I invited him inside. He was direct, professional, and well-informed. He'd already seen the video footage, read my statement, and spoken with Agent Reyes. But he needed something else. "We're preparing to file charges for conspiracy, mail tampering, wire fraud, and unlawful surveillance. We want to include witness intimidation. Your footage from the white car helps, but we need to establish a pattern." I nodded. You'll want to talk to Dana and probably a dozen others. Gloria's been running this place like a dictatorship. He scribbled some notes. Anyone ever mention being threatened for not paying a fine? Not directly, but I know people who paid just to avoid being targeted. We'll need their names. This could move into racketeering territory if we can prove she used the HOA as a front for personal gain. I gave him a list. Before he left, he paused at the door. You've been calm through all this. Most people would have lost it. I worked hospital security for 23 years. You don't survive that long without learning how to wait people out. He gave a small nod and left. The next few days were a whirlwind. Temporary control of the HOA was handed over to a court-appointed administrator. He was a retired judge named Thomas Leary, and he didn't waste time. On his first day, he held an open meeting at the community center. No live streams, no recordings, just residents and the truth. I showed up early and sat in the back. The place was packed. Judge Leary stepped up to the front, looked around, and said, "We won't be rebuilding the old order. We'll be tearing it down and starting fresh." He outlined a plan. Every violation issued under Gloria would be audited. Any funds collected from fabricated fines would be refunded. A new board would be elected under the oversight of a neutral third party. And most importantly, residents could now submit proposals to rewrite the bylaws. People erupted in applause. Near the end, Dana stood up and asked, "What about those of us who were afraid to speak up before?" Leary didn't hesitate. "Your voices matter now more than ever. If you were silenced, now's the time to speak." For the first time in years, Maple Ridge felt like it belonged to its residents again. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in months were exchanging stories, sharing evidence, comparing letters. I spent the next few days helping folks set up security cameras and walking them through how to file witness statements. I wasn't the hero, just the first domino, but it felt good knowing the wall had finally come down. A week after Gloria's arrest, I got a call from Agent Reyes. She sounded relieved. "The DA's filing charges tomorrow. We've got enough to hold her without bail. Looks like this whole thing's going to trial. You still need me to testify, definitely. But not just for the mailbox incident. You're ground zero." I didn't say anything at first. It was a strange feeling, knowing a petty power trip had spiraled into something that would end in federal court. "She messed with the wrong guy," Reyes added. "No," I said. "She messed with the wrong neighborhood." That night I walked out to my driveway. The air was calm. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to keep one eye on the street. Across the way, Dana waved from her porch. A few houses down, someone had already taken down the ugly HOA rules enforced sign from their lawn. Maple Ridge was changing. And this time, we were the ones in charge. The county prosecutor's office didn't wait long to make their move. By the end of the week, formal charges were filed against Gloria Summers and her co-conspirator, the man from her house, identified as Terrence Lane, her nephew and the fake security consultant. The list of charges was longer than anyone expected. Fraud, mail tampering, unlawful surveillance, misuse of HOA funds, filing false police reports, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. I didn't hear it from the news. I heard it from the clerk who knocked on my door with a subpoena. The trial would be held at the county courthouse, and I was a key witness. I let my manager at the hospital know I'd need time off during the proceedings. She didn't hesitate. Turns out she lived in a neighborhood with its own HOA horror stories and was more than happy to support someone dragging one into the light. The courthouse was packed on the first day of the hearing. Local reporters hovered on the steps, scribbling notes and filming B-roll. Inside, the atmosphere was stiff, like a room full of people holding their breath. Gloria sat at the defense table in a charcoal suit, her hair pulled tightly back. No robe, no sunglasses, no strut, just a pale face and a legal pad she never wrote on. Terrence looked worse. His eyes darted constantly and sweat glistened along his hairline. I was called to the stand on the second day. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Ellis, didn't waste time. "Mr. Harland, can you describe the events that led to your interaction with the police regarding your mail?" I walked her through it how Gloria had accused me of theft, how the officer confirmed the mail was addressed to me, and how my security footage proved I hadn't touched her box. She nodded, letting the jury absorb every detail. Then she brought up the footage of Gloria opening my mailbox in the middle of the night. "Did you recognize the person in the video?" "Yes." "And who was it?" "Gloria Summers." The defense attorney, a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days, tried to challenge me on the footage. "Is it possible the video was edited?" "No. It's time-stamped and uploaded directly from my Ring system, backed up to 3 cloud accounts and verified by postal investigators." He shifted tactics. "Could it have been someone else?" "Perhaps someone with a similar build. Not unless someone else wears the exact same leopard robe, walks the same way, and has the same hairstyle and sunglasses." The courtroom chuckled softly. The judge didn't stop them. Ellis followed that with a series of documents. I'd helped gather copies of fake violation letters, forged codes, and financial transfers from HOA accounts to the so-called security firm. Each piece was projected on a screen behind her, and each one drew a little more tension from the room. Dana testified next. She spoke clearly, without hesitation, her voice never wavering. She explained how Gloria had manipulated board votes, threatened residents with fines unless they complied, and fabricated violations when people pushed back. The jury leaned in by the time she showed them a violation letter that cited Code 5149, inappropriate holiday lighting, a code that didn't exist anywhere in the HOA bylaws. The real turning point came when the financial expert took the stand. A forensic auditor hired by the prosecutor laid out the money trail over $200,000 siphoned from HOA dues into Terrence's shell company over the course of 3 years. The breakdowns were brutal. Payments listed as emergency security upgrades, unauthorized surveillance prevention, and even mailbox integrity reinforcements. The courtroom was silent when he finished. The defense tried to argue that Gloria had acted in the neighborhood's best interest, that she believed she was protecting the community. But the receipts told a different story. So did the footage of her trying to open my mailbox. And the fact that at least 7 residents had filed complaints with city code enforcement about fraudulent fines, only to have them quietly dismissed by the board. By the end of the week, the jury was visibly done. They didn't need long. The verdict came the following Monday. Guilty on all counts. Gloria's sentence was handed down immediately. 5 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 3 and restitution for the full amount stolen, to be paid back to the HOA over time. Terrence received 3 years and a ban from holding any management position in a residential organization ever again. Neither of them spoke during sentencing. Gloria kept her eyes on the floor. Terrence looked like he might cry. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I gave a brief statement, nothing dramatic. Just a reminder that communities belong to the people who live in them, not to those who exploit them. After the trial, Judge Leary called another meeting, this time held in the open-air park, with folding chairs and a microphone powered by a portable speaker. The neighborhood turned out in full. He stepped up and addressed us directly. "You've all been through something ugly. But out of it comes something rare: freedom to rebuild. You're no longer under anyone's heel. You get to decide what kind of neighborhood this is." He introduced a temporary committee made up of volunteers. Dana was on it. So was a retired teacher, a stay-at-home dad, and a software engineer named Lee who had spearheaded a petition to remove the HOA entirely. I didn't join the committee. I had no interest in politics. But I offered to help them install cameras, secure the clubhouse, and set up a transparent file-sharing system where residents could see every budget, fine, or meeting agenda. No more secrets. Within 2 months, the neighborhood voted overwhelmingly to dissolve the HOA entirely. City services picked up the slack. Most of us agreed to an informal block council, just a monthly meeting to share concerns and coordinate events. No board, no fines, just neighbors talking like adults. The day the HOA officially shut down, I took the old signpost by the clubhouse, the one where violation notices used to be pinned, and repurposed it into a shared community board. People started posting birthday announcements, yard sale flyers, and handwritten notes offering to mow lawns or help fix fences. Instead of threats, it became a place for connection. A few weeks later, Dana stopped by my house with a small gift box. Inside was a miniature bronze mailbox on a wooden base, a plaque read, "Because you opened more than your own." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and promised to keep my cameras running for safety, not surveillance. Every now and then, I still hear new stories from other towns about HOAs that bend the rules, push people too far, and act like they're above the law. But I also hear about people standing up, neighbors organizing, exposing corruption, fighting back. Maple Ridge wasn't the first. It won't be the last. But it's proof that no matter how loud the clipboard tyrants get, a community that stands together is louder. And this time, for once, we decided what home meant. Together.